Hey Acers, glad I can be with you again today, and welcome to this week's Ace Role Playing Games. As I continue the Simply GM series, and this is actually technically number 26, but I kind of stopped numbering them as we got into these hazards. And I think I'll just keep not numbering them until we move on from hazards. But today's hazard that I want to talk about is electricity. So when you touch or brush up against an exposed wire of some kind, or an electric fence, like kind of small farms and stuff, you need to make a vigor roll at a -2. If you succeed, you're just distracted. But if you fail, you're stunned. But if you were like trying to climb the fence and you grab the electrified wire, your muscles will freeze up and you can't let go until you make a vigor roll at -4. And you get to do so as a free action at the start of every turn. And then each round the roll is failed, your character takes, or the character that's gripping the fence takes a level of fatigue. Once they're incapacitated, they can let go and no further rolls are required. Because a low voltage electric fence isn't going to, it can knock you out, but it can't kill you. Is at least the way the rules are reading here. Oh, I completely forgot to talk about this. So let me cover disease again for a second here. Remember how we talked about how they can be contracted through various vectors, and um, yeah, I'll have to come back to that because I completely missed a little insert table here about the disease categories. So we'll come to that. We'll come back to that. Well, let's finish up with electricity first. High voltage. Contact with high voltage electrical source, such as military level fence or a power line, causes 4d6 damage. It's a lot of damage. That means anywhere from 4 to 24 damage. And in dramatic games, it knocks the victim away from the fence. At least, so it knocks them away from the fence 1d4 inches on the board. So they can go from anywhere from 1 to 4 inches on a miniatures board. But since that's approximately 6 feet for each inch, that's from 6 to 24 feet away. More realistic games, the victim spasms and have to make vigor roll at -4 each turn to let go. Again, that's a free action at the start of the turn. If failed, the victim suffers damage until each turn until he manages to let go or dies. Increase the damage to 5d6 if the victim is standing in water or in the rain. Armor does not protect from electrical damage unless it's specifically designed to do so, like a rubberized suit. Okay, so going back to disease for a second here. We talked a couple times ago about disease and how you make vigor rolls to avoid infections and how symptoms could just be treated. But there's a really great table on page 126 of the core rulebook that breaks down disease into categories. There's chronic, debilitating, and lethal. So your chronic diseases include leprosy, final stages of tuberculosis or cancer, severe maladies. They may result in death if left untreated. And the character needs to make a vigor roll at the start of every session. Failure means that they're exhausted from spasms, coughing, fits, or similar issues. Maybe treatment. That might be another one. Critical failure means they'll expire before the end of the session. And the GM's encouraged to let the heroes go out in the blaze of glory. So that's one of the things we can do is, if somebody takes enough damage and they've bled out and everything, maybe give them one last hurrah where they can just drag themselves back to their feet, grab their guns and go charging in, or they can say something really cool to their friends and compatriots. Debilitating ones are ones like flus, stomach bugs, various specific symptoms, but generally just result in a level of fatigue or two for 2 to 6 days. Now, lethal ones are the fast acting diseases that kill and are actually very rare in the real world. But they're found on alien worlds or in forgotten dungeons or forgotten cities. On contracting the disease, the hero gets fatigued. At the start of each turn thereafter, they have to make a vigor roll or suffer a wound. Some diseases call for a vigor roll more slowly, such as once per hour or once per day. A successful healing roll stops the effects only if proper medicine is on hand to stop the disease. The healing power also halts the effects. So that's something else to consider is looking at the healing and making sure that that's being applied correctly. Now, it's up to you whether or not you're going to let your players completely heal from those diseases. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. And sometimes having a disease, think of, apparently, and I haven't seen the series myself, but apparently part of the motivation in Breaking Bad is that he believes he has cancer and doesn't have anything to leave for his children and his wife. So that's what starts him down his road to becoming a bad guy. And that's the big thing, is that the reason why we give damage and things like this to our players, to their characters, is because we want them to be able to have something to leverage in order to build a great story. So that's my advice here. That's my suggestions for this time around. I am so grateful that you joined me for these, and I'm actually even going to go a little further today because I'm only at 7 minutes right now, and I think it'd be fun to actually give you at least 10. So let's talk about falling. Falling's an interesting one. First of all, if a person falls, that is 1d6 plus 1 for each 2 yards they fall. That's the damage they take. So not 2 yards, but 2 inches. So 4 yards. Each inch is 2 yards. And so each 2 yards is, a yard is 3 feet, so 2 yards is 6 feet. So if they fall 12 feet, that's 1d6 plus 1. Maximum, so terminal velocity of 10d6 plus 10. Particularly soft ground, such as very deep snow, acts as a cushion. Every foot of snow reduces damage by 1 point. Water. On a successful athletics roll, it halves the damage into reasonably deep water at heights of 20 yards or less. A raise negates the damage entirely, and those who fall into water from heights greater than 20 yards take damage as if they'd hit solid earth. Because when you fall in real life, if like you like skydive or something, if you hit water, unless you're hitting it at a certain angle, it can be as hard as cement, and it can really mess up your day. So that's the deal about falling. And falling is, and I encourage my players to figure things out like this, or to ask me about things like this, or even give them hints sometimes if they're not thinking this way. But for example, in the and that's something I didn't give as examples of electrocution and falling, but it kind of gives some good ones anyway. But let's talk, going back up, about first disease, then electricity. So, I think I actually did give some disease examples. And when we talked about drowning, which is the next one, and I know I'm kind of scattered today, but at least I'm not yawning all over the place. That's a win for me, right? Anyway, but with electricity, so say somebody's walking through a house to try and get a bad guy, and there's an exposed electrical outlet. That's a that's going to either be distracted or stunned. And because I mean we use electricity and stun guns and tasers and things like that. So that's where a taser comes in and gives you a vigor -2 to succeed. And sometimes, yeah, you do go up and grab the fence without checking it first to see if it's electric. But let's talk high voltage for a minute. In the movie Remo Williams, which is one I grew up on, Remo and his partner, I can't remember his partner's name, they're breaking into see this HAARP satellite, this defense satellite that's supposedly being built by the bad guy. And the guy, the partner with him, he's clipping it has a sign right there hanging there saying high voltage. And that's actually one of the good indicators. Make sure there's a sign on the fence to indicate zap, high voltage. That's important. But so the guy is clipping the rings of the fence, and Remo, who's being trained by this special martial arts master in an art called Shinanju. Remo's like, did Chun teach you that? Chun is his instructor. Did Chun teach you that? And then the guy pulls up his arm and shows that it's a fake arm from the elbow down. It's plastic. And so it's essentially insulated. He's like, anti-personnel mine, Vietnam. And he keeps clipping the wires so they can, and then he moves the fence aside so they can get through the fence. But later, Remo has to get out of that wire, and so instead of grabbing onto it and being electrocuted and you're doing that thing and falling off the fence or something like that, Remo, he starts up a earth mover of some kind and just drives it, a caterpillar, drives it right through the fence. But his friend does get captured. But the fact that there's that electric fence there, that adds one more level of complexity to the story. And then for falling, of course, there's all sorts of things where falling kills a person or hurts a person, things like that. Possibly one of my favorite movies that had falling as part of a storyline is actually one called Terminal Velocity. And it wasn't a great movie. It was a Charlie Sheen movie. And Charlie Sheen, yeah, whatever. But we do have to say that there's that point where basically the girl jumps out of the plane and thinks he's trying to teach her how to go tandem down, but she doesn't want to do that. So she jumps out of the plane and her parachute doesn't open, and he sees the body hit the ground. She reached terminal velocity, hit the ground so hard that she was unrecognizable when he got down there after parachuting down himself. But it turns out that there's all sorts of twists and turns in it, and it's for a 20-plus-year-old movie, it's really a good one. And I would, if you want to dig up an oldie, it was kind of fun. So that's all I actually do have for today. And I'm just grateful that you're here. I really love that you keep coming back. I love you. You are loved. And you are an amazing person. And if you don't feel amazing right now, remember, amazing is not something that you just are. It's something you become, and it sometimes takes a little time. Your amazing might still be waiting to come out. You just need to keep doing the best you can with what you have right now, and your amazing will come. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you at my table.